Carol Off has made it her career to share stories to help people come together and break down differences to create more meaningful communities. And in her latest book, At a Loss for Words, Conversation in the Age of Rage, she tackles what the word freedom and several others has become in today's society. Carol Off, we welcome you to CP24 Breakfast. I think your book is just remarkably timely, especially when you look south of the border right now, what's happening in the U.S. election. Yeah. You chose 6 words in this book, freedom being the first chapter here. Let's talk about the words you chose before we get into the details here, but why don't you let the audience know what those words are and why you felt they were the 6 sort of most important to focus on.
Okay, the 6 are freedom, democracy, truth, woke, choice, and taxes, which we won't get into. That's a really complicated chapter. But when I started writing the book 2 years ago, when I felt that people were losing faith in our civil society. They started to think democracy was past. We didn't need to have communities. We didn't need to feel that we were socially together anymore. And people were so angry. Every time I interviewed someone on As It Happens, everyone was this rancor that kept coming to the surface. And I thought, I was worried when I started writing it that I'd already lost the chance to sort of encourage people to return to conversations, return to, even if you disagree with people vehemently, just listen to what they're saying and get your point across. So I finally get to this place where I have to write this book.
And conversations in the age of rage, I mean, social media just... Check out X. I mean, it's just rage farming, central almost. And it seems you can't have a conversation with someone you disagree with anymore. We seem so tribal right now. It's like, if you disagree with my point of view, I kind of hate you. And that seems to be the way we're going. So how do you think your book could help fix that fissure in terms of the way we communicate?
I think if people start to recognize how words are being used and how they're being manipulated, how they're being weaponized, to really listen to how the language is being used. And when you talk about the media, we see this social media has just taken over, and people feel they're getting the truth from it. They're not. The reason why they're not getting the truth is because there's no money in telling the truth. The social media companies know that people will stay engaged on their platforms longer if they feel anger and rage and uncertainty. That hooks them in. And so they have a vested interest in having that kind of adversity, having that kind of anger on their platforms. And to be rational, to be truthful, to tell facts, that doesn't make money for them.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's sad that facts are falling away by the wayside in the name of money. You talk a lot about the pandemic. You talk a lot about Donald Trump in your book as well. How much do you think the confluence of Donald Trump and the pandemic accelerated this age of rage?
No, I think that has everything to do with it. I think that when I first realized that we had entered this age of rage to a tremendous degree was 2 events. One was to see on January 6, 2021, when we saw these mobs storm the Capitol building in Washington. And then I saw it in the Freedom Convoy. We saw this rage, this anger, this feeling that people wouldn't talk to each other. There was no conversation to be had. That to listen to somebody was to give them a platform. We weren't going to do that anymore. And so that's when I realized that we had to start getting back to having conversations. And because I think people in the middle, these are talking about the fringe here, talking about people who are ideologues who don't want to be in a conversation. There's no conversation to be had. But the rest of us are in this frustrated middle where we want to return to having a civil society. We want to talk to each other. We want to work out our differences. And yet we have no place to take that conversation right now.
Yeah, you mentioned in the book how Stephen Colbert sort of coined the phrase truthiness, right? And we kind of laughed at it at the time, but now we're kind of in this post-truth, alternate fact kind of era here. In your epilogue, though, you say you have hope that we can fix this, solve this sort of thing, through words and language. Why do you have that hope? Because it just seems we're on this fast track to worse and not better.
I was really surprised when Kamala Harris walked on stage for the first time and said, we're taking the word freedom back. And I don't know if she'll win or if she'll be a good president, but what I saw in those early days, and we're still seeing, is this politics of joy, this politics of hope. And she is talking about freedom in terms of being together as a society, not freedom to do what you want, freedom to not be responsible, to have no obligations to others, but freedom to actually take care of each other, the freedom to be who you want, to be whatever gender you want, to marry who you want, to live where you want, to have reproductive freedom. All these things she is now talking about in a way that I didn't think when I started writing this book that I would hear. I thought people like you were going to say, you're really naive, Carol, to think that it's possible for us to have conversations when people just want to be killing each other practically.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking, I think it's possible we can move to this place of talking again, like you and I are.
Well, listen, I am certainly not naive enough to sit here and say, Karoloff, you're naive. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Really appreciate this book. Thanks for writing it. Thanks for being here this morning. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Appreciate this.